Our last speaker today will be Charles Carlson, who directs the Bus Rapid Transit Project Office for Metro Transit in the Twin Cities. Charles leads a team of planners, engineers, project managers, and construction managers implementing over a dozen BRT lines in the Twin Cities. Over the past decade, Charles has led BRT projects through study, planning, design, construction, and implementation. Charles holds master's and bachelor's degrees from the University of Minnesota. Charles.
Well, thank you very much. Charles here from Metro Transit, here to talk today mostly about the A line. So we have a number of lines. We'll touch on a couple of them, but really want to focus on our experience with the A line, both in terms of its initial performance and really what we sought out to do in the context of some of the other presentations we've heard today. So this map shows our BRT system. And the lines that we've opened are the A line on Snelling Avenue, shown in the darker blue color, as well as advancing on the C line on Penn Avenue North in Minneapolis. What's behind this in red is the areas of concentrated poverty in the Twin Cities that have over 50% people of color living in them. So really, each of these lines serves at least one of these ACP 50, as we call them, areas. Some have a majority of their length inside an ACP 50. So really critical in terms of the council's focus on more equitable outcomes in terms of improving transit service for the residents of these communities and improving access to destinations for the people who live here. So a big piece of this system is expanding the reach of the metro lines. So here's some of the metro lines as of circa 2015 when we made this map. These are really the core local routes that are connecting to these metro lines. We know from the blue line that about 40% of the people riding it arrive there by bus. So if that substantial of a share of our train and dedicated BRT type riders are arriving by bus, well, let's roll that transitway experience out to a greater segment of our population. With arterial BRT, our rapid bus lines, we're moving customers. The aim is 25 to 30% faster. We're bringing that transitway experience to many, many additional riders. So the corridors shown in gold here currently the routes serving these corridors carry about 90,000 rides a day. And with the implementation of BRT and the growth in the region that's focused around these corridors, we'd be rolling that out to another 70,000 people. So imagine a $400 million project that would carry 160,000 people a day is really the magnitude of the project that we're talking about. So it's not a line or two lines. It's a system of integrated routes supporting the basic economy of the Twin Cities. And along those lines, we're serving 1 out of every 3 jobs in the whole Twin Cities region are connected on these lines, many of those job centers are not on the metro lines, but would be served by the combination of rapid bus and the metro lines. So what we sought out to do is really solve a couple big problems we have on these corridors. The first is slow speed. So buses, in many cases, buses are moving less than half the time. And we knew about the slow speeds in these corridors. What we knew less about was what's contributing to slow speed. So we did a bunch of data collection and found that as we first thought, well, getting a dedicated lane is going to be the answer here, and that's going to be really hard because we'd be taking over most of the road. That wasn't the case. The case is that it's really slow to board, one at a time through the front door, paying cash, sometimes negotiating the fare. Another big factor is red lights. So the bus is moving slower, the bus falls behind, it falls out of sequence with other traffic in the corridor, and then we end up waiting at every single red light. So our focus quickly became, well, what can we do about the big factors here that are more than half the time at red lights and boarding delay? The other thing is on the right here, the transit's role in these streets is the infrastructure is not commensurate with the role transit plays. So if you look at this snowbank-covered bus stop, this is not a happy bus trip. Your commute mode, if you're starting your day tromping through a snowbank and getting on the bus with wet feet, the rest of your day isn't happy, and you're going to want to drive alone if you can. So what can we do about this situation? It's hard, though, because these sites, a lot of times we don't have shelters in these locations, as Carol noted, because the sites are really constrained. So the picture on the left here is Penn Avenue North in Minneapolis. We have a 5-foot sidewalk against the street. We can't put a 5-foot bus shelter in a 5-foot sidewalk. And it becomes very difficult to secure a private property access for that. Similarly, we also have historically had this mindset of, we got to get the bus out of the way of these cars. And so we build things like we used to have at Snelling and University, where we shove the bus off to the side, and you're going to be there for a few minutes, both to wait while people board, but then once you're ready to leave, you're going to be pinned in by all these cars coming by. And so, and on top of that, because we're putting you off to the side of the road, literally marginalizing our transit riders, we have a very narrow sidewalk, and then we try and come up with these incredibly narrow shelters that do very little to improve the waiting experience. But we shouldn't think about it that way. We should think about it in terms of the role transit plays in these corridors. So on these routes, buses make up about 3% of the vehicles using the corridors, but they're carrying about 33% of the riders. In this case, looking at Chicago Avenue. So we have, in these corridors, transit is punching way above its weight in terms of the role it plays. And we need to make investments that bring our infrastructure commensurate with that role. So we're doing that a few ways. We're addressing the speed factors. We're addressing the waiting experience factors. Off-board fare payment is a big tool that we're using. So you pay ahead of time. You board through all the doors of the bus. There's a proof of payment fare inspection. The rail validators for smart cards, very similar to our light rail system. So this is one big tool for us. Another big piece has been to implement raised curbs wherever possible, looking at a way that we can scale this to the context of these areas. Raising the curb many inches is very difficult. You quickly would get into business access problems, intersection ADA problems, and other factors, whereas standard curb is really most sidewalks today still a pretty big step in height. But with a raised curb, you can really very easily board a vehicle without the ramp. If you have a stroller, if you have a grocery cart, most walkers, while also having something we can easily implement, or more easily implement, in a dense built environment. So we also, the biggest thing we do with these projects is extend the curb actually out. Rather than pinning the bus against the curb, we bring the curb out. That provides two things. One, the bus can stop in the travel lane and quickly move along the corridor. The other is that now we have space for a clear boarding zone, as well as a more robust shelter on these corridors. So we have quick on, quick off the bus, a defined platform space, and then a more visible presence within the corridor for our transit service. The buses are also built to go faster. So the rear door is much wider. It's a 56-inch door. Passengers board through each door of the bus. One of the biggest things we've seen is that when you get on the back door of the bus, you're much more likely to go into the upper back section of the vehicle. What that leads to is much more even distribution of passengers within the bus, rather than on a regular bus. Usually you'd have a bunch of people crammed around the back door, very low utilization of the upper seating, because if you get on the front door, what are your chances of walking all the way back to the back? The other big things are no fare box, as I said. It's all off-board fare payment. And then actually some innovations in terms of a faster securement device, different from our regular fleet for passengers using mobility devices. So in terms of the A-line itself, we started construction in July of 2015. A lot of the civil work was completed last December or so. And then a lot of systems work continued through the spring prior to launching service on June 11th. Here's a picture of how these shelters go up. Typically, it's less than a day in terms of the actual shelter installation. There's a frame set up around the perimeter, and then a truck crane would lift the roof segments into place. However, getting to that point takes a while. There's often a lot of utility work in terms of removing any conflicts. Many times when you're opening a 100-year-old street, there may be something you didn't know about that didn't show up in the utility survey that you may not even then know what it is. You have to figure that out. And then a lot of times also, if you're opening the street, the city utilities will want to go in and renovate and modernize. If you're already digging a hole, just let us get in there. It'll only take us a few weeks, they say. And then once everything's in, we have these systems. So here we are installing ticket vending machines in the corridor this past spring. Here's electrical and communication cabinets arriving. This houses our power system so that we can provide the consistent amenities very commensurate with what we have in our light rail platforms: security cameras, heat, light, real-time information, et cetera. So the buses began arriving in November and continued through the early part of the year. We have a pylon marker, so this is a very visible corridor identifier at night and during the day. The T on the top actually starts to pulse when a vehicle is approaching. So if you're too far away to read the real-time sign, you have an indicator that if you hurry up, you might make it to this bus. So really trying to develop this from a transit customer perspective as much as anything else. Very robust signage to identify the destinations in the corridor as well as the stations along the line. And then we launched service back in June. So since June 11th, we've carried about 450,000 people in the corridor. We're carrying about 4,800 people a day. We have days over 5,000 on the A line itself. That's in addition to remaining local service in the corridor. So overall, we're up between 35 and 40% within this corridor. And one thing that's notable about that is we were running about 10-minute service before in the corridor, and now the A line runs every 10 minutes, in addition to half-hour service on the local bus. So there wasn't a huge addition of transit service in this corridor, but the increased visibility, the ease of use, the transit information, the packaging of this really led to a significant increase in the usage, where now on Sundays we're carrying what we used to carry on weekdays. And so really a strong response to, in the scheme of things, a fairly limited investment. $27 million for this project overall. The bulk of the operating cost was paid for by replacement of previously existing bus service. So really a significant improvement to what we mostly already were paying for anyway. And it's paid off in terms of ridership. This is from our opening weekend, so people out celebrating and enjoying the new line. We carried about 15,000 people the first few days when it was free, and then we've seen growth, including since the two universities directly along the corridor began their fall semesters most recently. But we also had a presence in the corridor to help people learn about the new system, help train people in on the ticket machines in the corridor, as well as understand how to make local bus connections through the corridor as well. So here's the kind of a shot of our completed station with the investments in as the sun began to set on that first day of service. You can see there's bidirectional stations. This is on Ford Parkway, just as you're approaching the Mississippi River, looking toward Minneapolis. So beginning to see a good ridership response, and we've been operating about 95% on-time performance. So very robust, reliable, and consistent transit improvement on this corridor that we're also planning to roll out one line a year as we complete our system of a dozen lines. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So what were the in percentages? So you showed that pie chart early on of red time waiting and boarding. So how much improvement did you see with this new development in those two areas?
That's a great question. So we haven't, we're now that schools have started up again, we're entering a period where we'll be doing data collection. particularly on dwell times to begin with, so getting at that boarding time reduction. Anecdotally, it's significantly shortened. We're also carrying more passengers, so that has a little bit of an offsetting effect. However, the limited stop nature of the corridor, so there's 20 stations where there used to be like 60 bus stops. Removing all the boarding delay at many of those bus stops is a big factor in terms of what speeds the service up.
So you're moving the buses through the corridor considerably faster than you were before with local service. Are you able to operate the A line with fewer vehicles in service than you were for the 84?
Sure. So we're operating more service with the same vehicles is really the change. We did add vehicles in the corridor because it runs more frequently when we consider the remaining local service. But we're getting more service per dollar than we were before.
Charles, can you talk a little bit about the underlying local service that still remains in the corridor, where those bus stops are, and have you had any issues with customer confusion between, am I at the right location if I'm here to catch the 84 and not the A line? And then my second question is about prioritization. You know, your map showing all the arterial BRT corridors and the concentrated areas of poverty. Have you guys done a prioritization exercise to determine kind of the priority of those corridors and which one comes next?
Sure. So on the first piece, there is remaining 30-minute local service in the corridor. What we've seen is more than what we expected in terms of the shift to the A line. It seems that people are willing to walk to get to better and faster service. So what we've seen is a pretty significant reduction beyond what we expected with Route 84, to the point where its productivity may require some adjustment in terms of the schedule that's provided. However, we have not heard a lot of confusion about the new service. I think the visible scale of the new stations helps with that, as does a pretty detailed and site-specific customized signage package that we rolled out of semi-permanent signs at the non-A-line stops, explaining to customers that the bus will come here, it won't come as frequently. For more frequent, better service, walk to whatever the nearest station would be. Remind me of your second one.
Prioritization.
Okay. Yeah. So we have a bunch of lines. We have a pretty ambitious program. We need to prioritize that. So far, there's been a couple factors that actually stemmed from an initial study we did of several corridors. One factor is the technical, sort of a technical score, so the merits on ridership, on cost effectiveness, et cetera. Perhaps equally or more important than that has been the readiness of any particular corridor. So in the case of the A line, we had a grant opportunity that was very well matched to the characteristics of this line. There was also a lot of work coming up on Snelling Avenue that MnDOT was planning, that Ramsey County was planning on Ford Parkway, that if somebody was going to be making a bunch of investment anyway, it made a lot of sense to kind of bundle that together with the transit improvement. We're seeing something very similar unfolding on Penn Avenue, where the county has a robust transportation project. We can go in at the same time and develop and deliver a better transportation outcome in partnership with this other work. So we'll probably continue along those lines.
Have people been figuring out that they have to pay before they get on pretty easily, or is there a lot of bus drivers telling people they've got to get back off and tap their card or whatever that is? Has it been fairly seamless?
It's been fairly seamless in terms of people understanding that the payment system is different. We have pretty good go-to card utilization to begin with in this corridor, where we may be looking at ways to reduce the number of steps in a ticket vending machine purchase. Right now, it's programmed around being ready to respond to any situation versus making it really fast to pay for the typical purchase, which is a single full fare ticket. So there's things we're doing that could speed that up, but from our police, fare evasion is minimal to non-existent, and from our drivers, people seem to be figuring it out fairly readily.
Question, what were the most significant factors in determining your station spacing?
Sure, so the stations are spaced about every half mile or so. The biggest factor was, number one, connecting routes. So a lot of the stations as a crosstown route, the Snelling Avenue corridor has a lot of intersecting bus service. And essentially, without exception, where there's a connecting route, there's a station. Beyond that, ridership is the next biggest piece. Beyond that, station spacing, not wanting to get too far on either side of a half mile between stations really became the driving factor. And then finally, community interest. So there were some station relocations and a station addition based on questions, concerns, and interest level raised by community neighbors through the station planning and design process.
Charles, I have a question, which is about the impact of A-line on Green Line and Blue Line ridership. Because when Green Line was opened, actually, it not only you see that ridership gains on the Green Line, but also ridership gains on the Blue Line. So I'm just curious that given that this is a relatively new, unique, fast, reliable transit service, and it offer transfers to Green and the Blue Line, whether there is actually a system level impact in terms of ridership.
Sure. So we're just beginning to dig into some of the station level data. Anecdotally, we see the biggest growth at the Blue Line stations, the Green Line station, and then at Rosedale Mall are where we're seeing the most kind of concentrated growth. Also, anecdotally, they built a fairly high-end apartment building with a Whole Foods in it at the corner of Snelling and Selby. And that was pretty much a sleeper location before. And now, if you go out there in the morning, you'll see a bunch of people dressed in business clothes get on, ride one stop to the Green Line, and get off. So that seems to be a big growth sector, both in terms of the new development in the area, but also the transitway connection afforded by a high-quality bus route.
So you mentioned tying in with some ongoing development. On Ford Parkway, there were brand new sidewalks that were built right before the Red Line stations were built, and then those brand new sidewalks had to be torn out to make these new stations. So I'm just curious if there are any lessons learned and how to better coordinate so we're not tearing out brand new developments and better tying these things together.
Sure. So there were actually a number of coordinated projects that we were able to pull off with Minnehaha Avenue reconstruction with Hennepin County, the Ford Parkway east of Howell construction, as well as a significant construction project with MnDOT. We had also talked to the city about delaying their streetscape improvements through the core commercial area of Highland Park and Ford Parkway. 1 year, so it would better time with this project. Ultimately, a local decision was made to move ahead with that, knowing what the implications would be, and then being fine with Metro Transit doing it. They did have segments where the actual station would go that they didn't reconstruct, and then they spray painted on the ground MTC 2015 as their indicator of why that short section wasn't reconstructed.
Got a quick technical question and a larger question. The technical question is, and apologize if I missed it, what's the actual difference in travel time from what the 84 took to cover that versus the A-line? And then on a larger scale, we heard Andy talk about the impacts on jobs and so forth, and that physical infrastructure makes a difference. We heard from you that ridership has been positively impacted by these changes, even though and this is not a dedicated infrastructure. This is one for anybody to respond to that's been talking today. I'm wondering if there's a relationship between ridership and job location, or if those are independent and both desirable, or how those interact.
Sure. So the travel time performance, one thing that was different about the 84 versus the other routes is it's not sort of a radial route coming out of downtown. So the average speed actually to begin with was much higher than a lot of these other urban corridors. However, we were still able to realize about a 20% improvement in the travel time by implementing the A-line bus. It varies a bit across the day. The lower levels of travel time improvement are early in the morning, late at night, when there's really no delay anyway. The greatest levels of improvement are really in the afternoon and morning peak periods, where we have been able to overcome a lot of the delay factors with BRT. For the broader question, I think I'd leave it to smarter people than me to think about those relationships.
Well, I don't know about smarter, but I think one thing is that it's important to remember that not every line has the same role in the transit system. Just as Charles said, the A line's not a radial corridor. So one, it's feeding people into other corridors that allow direct access to jobs. It's also because it's a mixed traffic bus-based service. I think lines like this, it's easier to take the transit way to an existing job center. So you don't, it may be possible to just design your routing so that you're serving an area that already has a robust job center there instead of having to create one around a new station area.
I would also observe briefly that a lot of the growth that we've seen has been at Rosedale, major regional mall. A huge spike in ridership occurs around the times that the mall opens and closes. So that tells us, in part, that it's a major source for how people are getting to work at that fairly substantial job center of primarily service-type jobs.
Other questions? Questions from online?
No, our online audience is quiet today. They're there, but they're quiet.
There is one, okay. Well, thank you, Charles, then. Again, I would remind people to sign in. There are a lot more people in the room than there are on the paper. Thank everyone for attending, reminding everybody about the CTS Research Conference on November 3rd. Please sign up online. And if you're interested in getting more involved in the work of the Planning and Economy Council, talk to me or talk to Brenda.